welcome everybody. For those of you who don't know Northcoders, we were founded in 2015. We're an industry-leading software development training and solutions provider, currently operating completely remotely, but with hubs in Leeds, Manchester and soon to be Birmingham. We've trained over 750 people, like you, in our boot camps and over 50 people throughout our mid-level developer apprenticeship academy. 95% of our boot camps are now in a variety of software development roles, from junior developers, data engineers, testers, and even up to head of technology. So we're very proud to say that 25% of people we've trained are female, which is considerably higher than the national average of 18% for women in technical roles in the UK. I won't be on the session at the end, however, we will be able to send over to you lots of information about us, how you can get into software development, anything that you might need to know, and obviously about how you can join our course. Without further ado, I will hand you over to Jonny and Philippa for today's session.
Thank you very much, Karen. Really lovely to see you all. I'm sure we'll have a few people dropping in as we go. So thankfully, I'm got Philippa here as well to help me out, and I'm sure she will make sure people are apprised of what they can do to join in and follow along as they arrive. So me and Philippa, we both work at Northcoders. Until quite recently, I was the head of the classroom at Northcoders, so I ran all of the programs for the bootcamp that we run that Karen just mentioned, which is like a 14-week course to get people ready for software development, and also our apprenticeship programs as well. Now I head up the engineering at Northcoders along with Sam Kane, and we work on sort of internal and external projects to keep our kind of toes in the water of like what development is actually like in the real world, which really helps inform how we teach as well. So we've kind of got industry mixed with education. I used to be a teacher in the past, which some elements I enjoyed and some I didn't. And I really, really enjoy my job now because I get to do all the things I love about teaching, which is, you know, sharing things I know with other people and seeing them learn them, but also work with tech, which I've always really enjoyed as well. I'm assuming most of you are here because you've also got an interest in this and perhaps are thinking about it as a potential career path. We will answer any questions you've got about Northcoders, how it works, what you're interested in doing. We'll definitely leave some time at the end for that. And also about tech in general, I'll do my best to answer anything if you're interested in how stuff works. We should have plenty of time. We've got an hour and a half. I think I've probably got a bit over an hour's worth of stuff to show you, so we'll have plenty of time to show, but we'll kind of judge it as we go, and I'll make sure I've got that time for questions. So there's a couple of ways you might want to kind of watch what we're doing today. Either you can just sit back and watch and pay attention and get those questions. Feel free to ask those questions in the chat as you go, by the way. If you've got a bit of space on your screen, you can also follow along with what I'm doing. I'll show you how you'll do that in just a second. It might be quite difficult to do that if you're not able to see both me sharing my screen and also follow along on that link. So if you've got two devices or two screens, it'll be quite easy. If you've got a big screen, you might be able to shift them together. If you're on a smaller laptop, it might be a bit of a struggle. Feel free to give it a go. I will send part of the information we'll send out at the end. We'll have all of the code, how it started, how it finished. So you along with the recording of the video, you'll be able to watch back and follow along without in your own time as well. So completely up to you how you want to do it. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So as I said, we run, and Karen said we run this boot camp at Northcoders. It's 14 weeks, and we run this session we've got today, Introduction to Programming, quite a lot historically, and the sort of stuff that we have covered in the past has been the kind of first steps into programming, the real kind of basic building blocks, But those sessions that we've run before, not part of this Manchester Digital, we'd run them over 2 evenings, 6 hours in total, and there's no way that we'll get through all of that content today in this format. So I'm going to do something a little bit different, which is actually look at something that we make towards the end of the course. So please bear that in mind as you're watching this. There's going to be quite a lot of stuff here that we've got no expectation that you understand to start with, and really no expectation that you'll understand at the end of it. All I'm really trying to get you to do is understand when you have had a little bit of practice and when you have seen some of this work, you can make something, you know, fairly interesting quite quickly. So you get a sense of where you'll be, you know, after a few weeks training. That's not to say I won't answer any questions about how it's working or try and show some of the fundamental stuff as well. But I think to keep it interesting and to get something kind of useful and exciting at the end of it, we're going to jump forward a little bit. So yeah, maybe learn a little bit about how the internet works. You know, how we're actually all sat here listening to each other and watching each other's videos as well. So I'm going to share my screen now, and here we go. And hopefully you can see some black boxes on the left-hand side and a big white box on the right-hand side. So this is a program, a website called CodePen. It's really a nice website for just doing small demonstrations of what we call front-end code. Front-end code is the stuff that you see on your browser. And I should say, I don't know what any of your histories are, what any familiarity you've got with tech at all. Some of you, I'm probably saying stuff that you've come across already. Some of you will just not know any of these words. And if I say something that I make an assumption that you understand what a word means or know what something is, please just ask in the chat. Philippa will fill you in, and I apologize in advance if I do that. So we've got some boxes on the left. We've got, this CodePen site is really good for making this front end code, this code that helps you see what websites, things on your browser, whether that's Chrome or Firefox or Internet Explorer or Safari or whatever it is that you're using. The other cool thing about it is that I can share this link and you can create a kind of cloned version of it on your computer. So if you do want to follow along, you can do that. It won't affect what I'm doing on my screen. But as long as I save it every so often, if you lose track of what I'm doing, all you have to do is refresh the page and you'll get it to the same state that I'm currently at. So you can kind of follow along if you kind of miss a little semicolon somewhere or a bracket or something and can't find it. All you have to do is refresh and you'll get it back to where I'm at. So I'm going to just share this in the chat now, and if you do want to keep it open and type some stuff as you go, you're more than welcome. Where is the chat? Here we go. There you go. So yeah, if I forget to save for a little while and you know you've got to refresh, just give me a shout and I'll make sure I save it before you do that. Okay, cool. So the thing we're going to make today is a little chat room. We're all going to share the same database, which is something I'll explain a little bit later, which means we can send messages to each other by the end of this. So even if you're not following along, it might be cool if you could follow the link at the end and try sending a couple of messages to see if it works. I've got a little bit of stuff that I have already put into the CodePen, but not very much. We're pretty much doing this from scratch. So I'm going to talk you through what these three boxes here are for, and then we're going to make sure we fill in some stuff in each of these. You can see that in all of them, there's some gray text. The stuff around the gray text is a little bit different in each. Here we've got this exclamation mark and the angle bracket and some dashes. Here we've got the slash star. Here we've just got 2 slashes. But in all of these cases, the gray text is called a comment. And a comment is something that is just ignored by the by the computer when it runs the code. It's just for your benefit to help you understand what's going on there. So anything that you write in comments like this, it's not being used by the computer at all. It's just there to help show what to do. So I put in a few comments in each of these to explain some of the things we're going to make, and so you can hopefully find the bits that we're up to if you're following along. So I'm going to start with the HTML. We've got 3 technologies that help browsers, like I'm using Chrome, Google Chrome, that help browsers show stuff on your screen. Those are HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. These have been around for like 30 years or so, and the way all browsers work, it's what you might call a standard, something that is set about how the internet works. So learning these 3, you can get a lot. You can get a lot done if you learn a little bit of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in terms of making websites. The HTML is to do with is your content, right? What is actually being shown on the screen? What am I using? How is it laid out? How is it ordered? So all the kind of stuff, all the text, any kind of images, any arrangements, stuff like that goes inside your HTML. Your CSS is to do with your styling or your appearance of your code. So anything about how you want it to look, the fonts, the colors, the backgrounds, the spacing, anything like that, animations, they go in CSS. And the JavaScript is all about the behaviors or the interactability of your website. So what does it actually do? Like when I click this button, what is it going to do? When I fill in this form field, what's it actually going to do? So we're going to cover all of these 3 today, and we'll see a little bit about how they all come together. Before I go any further, any questions, or anyone need me to make anything bigger, anything not clear, can't hear me properly, anything like that before I get going with actually typing some code? Just give me a shout or write in the chat. Give it a few seconds. Okay, cool. I'll keep running then. So first things first, I'm going to try and make some stuff appear on my screen. And I should say I've got a second screen here, which I'm looking up at as my kind of reference. So if you see me glance into the distance, that's what I'm doing. I'm just looking up at my other notes. So I'm going to go to my HTML first to do this. And I want a title. I should warn you, like, this is all going to look really, really rubbish to start with, because we're not doing any of the styling or anything like that. Hopefully we'll get it a little bit neater by the end, but this is going to, if you were around using the internet in like 1993 or 1994, this is a little bit what it looked like before more fancy stuff came in. So first things first, I'm going to make a title, and I'm going to use a tag. It's called an H1 tag to do this. And everything in HTML is built around these tags. We put tags inside tags inside tags. It's like a little structure where we decide what kind of things we're going to make. And H1 just means a heading, the biggest heading. So we often use it for a title. And you can see here on the left-hand side, I've got this opening tag, and here on the right side is this closing tag. And anything in the middle is going to be my heading, and it's going to get treated like a heading. So I'm going to call this NC for Northcoders chat. Bit of branding there for us. And CodePen will kind of update the screen live for that. So that's how it's interpreting that. I can do smaller headings. So I could try an H4, and it's going to make it a little bit smaller. That's what a smaller heading looks like. So you've got a sense of the browser's already interpreting a little bit what I'm trying to do with these headings for me. By the fact that I've used an H1. Cool, so there's my title already done. How about that? Next, I'm going to make somewhere for these messages to appear. Now, I've not got the messages yet. I've not gone and fetched them. I've not gone and put them in my screen. So I'm not going to see anything from this. But I do want a space where they are going to appear. And for that, I'm going to make a little section called a div. which I think is a vaguely amusing name. So this div is says like this. Think of this as like a little section or part of your website. It's going to separate it out from the rest. And inside that, I'm going to have a list, right? Because that's how messages appear in a chat room. We have lists of them. So I'm going to use a tag called a UL, which is an unordered list. I don't need this list to be numbered. We don't need to number these messages as they come in. So unordered means they aren't numbered. And it's just reminding me to save, so I'm going to do that. And like we can't see anything there because we haven't put any items inside our list. We could just add one quickly just to see what that's going to look like. So I'm going to make a list item or an li inside that list, and and you can see it's already given me a little bullet point there for that list item, but no text yet. This is my first message. Woo. Okay, cool. So this isn't how my messages are going to appear, because this is only on my computer, right? It's not a chat room for everyone. So I'll get rid of this at some point, but at the moment I'll keep it there. And we're also going to need somewhere to write a message. And this one's going to be a little bit more complicated. So I'm going to make a few tags to do this. The first tag I'm going to make is a form. And a form is anything on your front end where you need your user to input some information and then they're going to submit that. So I'm going to make this form, and I'm going to make a label for this thing inside my form. And this label is going to be, what would you like to say? At the moment, this isn't labeling anything though. So inside this label, I'm going to make another field called an input field. And this one's going to look a little bit different. It's called a self-closing tag, where I don't need to make one of these at one end and one at the other end. I forgot to close this one here. This closes itself because we're not going to write the text in here. This is going to be something that our users write the text in. They're going to type some stuff in here in order to do that. So I don't put the text in here for that. Okay, and as I say, not the prettiest thing in the world, but we've got kind of the basics of a chat room already, right? We've got a title, we've got a place for our messages, and we've got a place where we can type our messages. Cool. I had a message from Ava saying, put too many O's in her woo. I don't think you can have too many O's in a woo, or at least the amount of O's in your woo determine how excited you are about writing that message. Okay, cool. So let's see if we can smarten this up a little bit, because this is a little bit painful to look at the moment. So I'm going to go to my CSS and make a few changes in here. So cool. So first thing I'm going to do is think about this page as a whole. You can see I'm black and white at the moment. That's okay, but it's a little bit harsh. I think I'm going to make the background a bit of a light gray. So I'm going to grab the whole page, and I'm going to do that by saying this body tag, which is everything that I can see goes inside this body tag. It has to, right? Anything that I want to be able to see on the screen has to go inside this body tag. That's just how these browsers work. So if I grab the body tag in my CSS by just typing the word body, and then open these brackets here, then anything that I type inside here is going to apply to everything in the body. So I'm going to change the background to a nice light gray color. And I'm going to do that. So there is it will accept a few words, right? It does know what a few different words are. Let's change that to a gray. I'm not particularly keen on that gray. I'm going to find a different one. So I'm going to go open this up. and let's find like a color picker. And Google has one for free here. So I'm going to go find something. Maybe I'm going to put a little bit of blue in it, just a little thing. Keep it nice and cool. I don't know. What do you think, Philippa? Is that nice? Yeah. Okay. So what have I done here? I've chosen a color, and you can see down the bottom here, I'm getting a few ways of representing that color. If some of these I don't really know anything about, then they're useful for like graphics designers, but I'm not sure what all of these three refer to. I do know these two though. These two are used a lot in programming. So we've got a hex representation and an RGB representation. So the RGB is a mix of okay, how much red out of 256 is it goes if I'll give 5 points to anyone who can put in the chat why 256 is the right number, assuming I have got the right number there. Yeah, 256. Why you think 256 might be a good number there? How much green and how much blue, and you can see that actually most of them are really near the top, and when you mix all the colors together you get white in this. So this is pretty close to white, but we've just got slightly more blue and slightly more green. And another way of writing that is this hex code, and actually this hex code is the same thing. That F2 is another way of writing 242 using a different kind of way of writing. So a way of writing numbers. So we're used to writing numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, 12, and so on. And every time we run out of those 10 digits, we add another number onto the end, and that's called base 10. But with computers, we everything's done on zeros and ones because something's either turned on or it isn't. So we double numbers up and we work that way. So you'll find a lot of numbers like 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, and you can probably see where I'm going with this, 256, right? So these numbers are all really useful in programming because they can just represent little bits of your computer chip turning on and off. And they can read them that way. So because this is base 16, which is what hex is, and that means we need some other numbers to represent, or some other things to represent the numbers bigger than 10. So we have a few letters pop in there as well. So an A is like 11, and an F is like 16 or 15, I should. Yeah, no, 16. So you can think of FA as 15 times 16 plus 11, which I think is 250, something like that. I've probably got those numbers slightly wrong. Anyway, not something we really need to worry about, but it does mean I am gonna grab this hex code here, head back here, and replace this with that hex code, and it will turn it into a nice kind of light blue color that we can use as our background. I'm also not very keen on how close all of this stuff is to the edge. I like my applications to have a little bit of space to breathe around the edge. So I'm going to create a margin for this body of 25 px. Have a little guess what px might be. Pixels, if you want that. I'm sure a few of you are thinking that. So pixel is like the smallest representation of space that your computer allows. And I didn't actually, you might have seen that just sort of pop in a little bit there. There's now 25 pixel space between the body and the edge of the page, which is a little bit nicer. Well done, Katie. Kev said, did hexadecimal in extension maths in the early 90s, never thought you'd actually use it. Oh, well, now your life has come full circle, Kev. You are ready to put it all into practice. I'm surprised by how much maths I've been able to make use of. That said, please don't let that put you off if you aren't into maths or maths was not your thing. As you can see, all you really need to do is search color picker, and you get everything you need in order to do stuff like that. So useful, but not everything. Cool. Okay, what else could I do to improve this? So at the top of my HTML, I actually went and fetched a couple of fonts. There are a few fonts that come in browsers already. I don't really like any of them. They're all pretty old school. So I went to Google Fonts and said, okay, will you please feed me this pangolin font here, which is nice and friendly and funky, and I'm going to apply it to everything in my body as well. So I'm going to go to, in fact, I can just, I'll do that here. So I'm going to use another key here called font family, and then I'm going to use pangolin. And not everyone will be able to get the pangolin font. So if you don't, if it fails to get from Google, or Google's like, sorry, it's not working, then you can provide like a fallback font, which I'll just use the basic cursive. So that's how we often write fonts in our CSS for things there. So looking a little bit friendlier already, far from beautiful, but a bit nicer. I'm also going to make it so we can see this stuff, the box around here a little bit more. I'm still not fetching the messages, but I definitely want this to have its own space. Now, how do I grab this div then? If I'm going to apply some styling to this space, well, I could do something very similar to what I've done here. But this is a little bit of a risk, because I might actually end up with quite a few different divs in my code. So I don't really want to be this general. I might have sections, might have like a login bit, I might have some stats or who's in the chat room or something like that. And they might all have their own divs. And if I apply the styling to this div, then I'll be applying it to all of them. So I need a more specific way of grabbing this specific div. And so I'm going to give it an ID. So inside these ankle brackets here, I'm going to say, okay, this div, I'm going to call you my, what have I used up here? Better be consistent. I'm going to call it my message list container. So a bit wordy, but definitely going to know what it is. So one thing in programming, always err on the side of using longer names for things so you know what they are. Don't use like one letter names for things, because you'll never remember what it is in a few days. Okay, so I've got this message list container ID. So instead of grabbing this div by its tag name, div, I'm going to grab it by its ID name, and I do that by using a hash key. On my Mac, I do that by doing Option 3. If you're on a Windows machine, I'm not sure, but let me know if you can't find it. And then the name of my ID. Cool. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a border. And my border is going to take a few arguments or pieces of information. First, how thick it's going to be. Second, the type of border. So you can have solid, you can have dotted, you can have dashes. And then a color for it. And I'm going to use the Northcoders red color, which is, we have to be very consistent with our branding, which is Hex EB152F. And then we have a little semicolon at the end to say that's done. And that's the same red as apparently is on my hoodie here, though I'm not entirely sure. It kind of looks more orange on here for some reason. Maybe it's the gray background. I don't know. So there we go. And I'm going to set the height as well. I want this box to be, I'm going to make it take up like the big chunk of my screen. So I'll try 400 pixels. Cool, that looks about right. but I don't want it to be the whole width because I just don't. So I'm going to go with 500 pixels, keep it just a little bit more contained. Then maybe sometime in the future, I can stick something else in that space. One thing I forgot to mention earlier, I don't know if anyone is following along, but sorry, your faces have just gone in the way. When you loaded this up, it might have been arranged a little bit differently. If you click on change view, you may have it in this view here in the editor layout. I've put it to the left to, I think it's just a little easier for this application. Okie dokie. So what's next? I think it's time we go and fetch our messages now. So I'm going to introduce the JavaScript. We'll do some more stuff in here, definitely, but maybe towards the end when we've made things a little bit nicer. Okay, so we've got quite a lot to do here. So the JavaScript, I would say, is the most interesting part of the programming. We can use JavaScript for all sorts of things, not just for websites, not just for making stuff. We can also use it for managing data in servers. We can use it to program computers and cars and fridges, or on a little Raspberry Pi if you've got one of those tiny computers. You can use it for all sorts of things. It's one of the most versatile and widely used languages, and a really good language to start using. You may well, oh no, I've got the wrong red. I just had a message. Better change that. But we've got a wrong red. Sorry. It is EB. It's really not very different. You're probably not even going to see. Does that look different? Ooh, slightly darker, I think, maybe. Okay, my bad. Sorry, B. Off brand there, very naughty. Okay, so yeah, back to JavaScript. We use it for all sorts of different things, all sorts of exciting things. So really good language to use. If you are probably a little bit younger than me, I think I'm 35. I think I was about 5 years late for computing to be on the national curriculum, which was a bit of a shame, really. I think it's really good that it's on the curriculum. That's not to say that it's always taught very well, or that you do particularly good stuff in it, but I'm glad it's there. And we actually did a bit of work with schools and colleges earlier to help improve the curriculum earlier the year before last. So that hopefully some of that stuff will come in soon. So you may have done a little bit of JavaScript there. You may have done some Python. That's often a common one that's used to make programs. And if you're a bit older, maybe had some experience before, you might have done things like C or C++. And there are dozens of languages. It can be quite overwhelming to think that there are dozens when you don't even know one of them. But actually, they share a lot of the same concepts. And once you get to know one well, it's not that difficult to slide into other ones. And at Northcoders, we teach JavaScript because we can use it to make full applications. But about half of our students go on and work in a different language. So it's quite, it's more about the kind of understanding the fundamentals and how this all works is way more important than getting to know a language in particular. So I've got a little bit of code here. This is the code that connects to the database. Now let's try and show what I mean by that, because that is the sort of thing that we would say in a few weeks into the boot camp, and everyone would feel comfortable with. But at this stage, you might not really know what that is. So if you think about, sorry, I've got a little trackpad here, which isn't very well aligned with the space I'm filling in, but never mind. So if we've got a little, we've got a computer somewhere in the world. Now, I don't know where this computer is. It's not my computer. In this case, it belongs to Google, because Google also make this Firebase, sorry, make this database that I'm using called Firebase. And this computer is called a server. It's not, it might not look anything like a computer you imagine. It probably doesn't have a screen attached to it. People might carry around a screen they can plug in to interact with it. It might be part of a massive server farm with loads of giant computers just stuck in a warehouse with massive fans keeping them cool under lock and key. But somewhere in this computer is a wire that is connecting it to the internet, and its main job is to send me information, whatever information it's decided to keep on there. And we've all got computers dotted around the country or the world. I don't know where you all are. Wherever we are, and these computers are called clients, and that's because they want to get information from the server. I'm going to draw the arrow the other way to show that. So these clients are getting information from the server. It's like, please, I've gone to this website, or I'm going to this database, please send me some information. It's kind of how this Zoom meeting is happening, a little bit different. With this Zoom one, it'll be a different computer somewhere else belonging to Zoom. And in this case, we'll say this computer's me. I am sending video information via my webcam to this computer, and it is sending it all to you. Simultaneously, well, nearly simultaneously, as soon as it arrives. And it's pretty amazing, really, to think that this information is sort of traveling down wires quick enough to basically be in real time to get to you. So this is called, what we're doing here is called streaming, where the information comes to this computer and then sends to all of you immediately. What we're doing with the database here is a little bit different, actually. We're going to be just going to it and grabbing information when we want it. But we can also put information in. We can go and get the messages that are already there, but we can also write our own messages and add that data into the database there. Put the DB there for server. If you've got any questions about that, then or it doesn't really make sense, then let me know. Put them in the chat. But that's I'm just showing you that to demonstrate what this bit of code is doing, really. So this bit of code here is saying, okay, I've got a particular database somewhere in the internet. I'm going to make a connection to it. And then this bit here is saying, okay, I know there's some messages on this database. Every time they change, will you do something for me, please? And that thing that they're going to do is add some messages to a list. Now, I haven't written this function yet, and so I've commented it out. You see those two slashes at the start. I haven't written this behavior yet. So that's the next thing I'm going to do. If I leave that in there, if I put that in there now before I've said what that actually does, then I get this little red exclamation mark down here saying, add message to list is not something that I know about. It's not defined. So I need to get that, write that behavior now before it will stop moaning at me. Okay, so I'm going to jump down to this bottom question here, and I'm going to write this behavior, and I'm going to write it in the form of a function, because this is going to be useful. Every time this message appears, we want to reuse this bit of code that I'm going to write. So I'm going to wrap it all in something called a function, which means it's like, yeah, you can do this again and again and again just by naming this function. So please don't worry too much about the syntax here. This is something we'll point you towards links and resources, materials that you can use for like next steps if you're interested in, if this is appealing to you. will show you where to go. So I'm going to give this function a name, and it's going to match the name that I've used here, called add message to list. And I'd say one thing to keep in mind as I write this is that computers are stupid. You know, stupid is too kind a word, really, for computers. They are not things that are willing to try and work out what you mean, right? They're not going to say, oh, I think that's what he or she means. I'm just going to, you know, make a good stab at it. It doesn't work like that. Oh, sorry, I've lost. There we go. It doesn't work like that. We have to get it exactly right, pretty much, else the computer will complain. There's all sorts of ways to help us doing that. And one of those ways is this kind of different color that CodePen is giving me for all of the words that I'm writing. Some of these, you can think of it as like a grammar. Some of these some of these colors mean specific things. So like if there's a yellow word, that means, oh, that's a really special word in JavaScript. And you're gonna, that means something. I'm gonna use that to determine what's going on around me. If we've got this light blue, it means, oh, that's the name for something, in this case, this function. And this function is going to be a special function because it's going to take an argument. It's going to be told about the message. And you might see how that corresponds with up here. I found I'm getting the messages sent to me every time there's a change in the database. And so I'm passing that message into this function in between these brackets. So I can use this behavior again and again for different messages. Again, please don't worry if this is too much going too quick. This is way beyond first steps already for what we'd normally cover. And yes, absolutely, the recording will be available afterwards. So you've got plenty of time to dissect this if you want to go back and go slower. Okay, so I'm going to do a few bits and pieces with this message. I want to stick them in here. Now, I've got my HTML tags where I know I want to put these messages, but I don't have them in my JavaScript yet. So I'm going to go and grab them from my HTML. And I'm going to do that up here. So I've said here, we'll need to grab some of the elements from our document. The elements are just all of the different things that I've made. So the title, the div and the UL, the LI, the form, the input field, the label, those are all the elements that I've made so far. So the one that I'm definitely going to need to grab for this is my list. And at the moment, actually, I don't have a very easy way of grabbing it because I haven't given it an ID. So my unordered list, again, I'm going to give that an ID, close you back. And I'm going to save this list to a variable. So what I'm doing here is saying, okay, I'm going to make something called message list. It's going to be constant. It's not going to change. And I'm going to make it equal to this bit of code here. Do not worry too much about this. Hopefully, you can kind of see what it does just by the name of this function, right? It's going to grab this element by its ID. And just like my add message to list function, I can pass this an argument inside these brackets and say, I want to find the thing that's called message list. Okay, super. I'm just going to put that down here where I said I would write it. Okay, cool. So now I've got this message list around down here, I can make a reference to it. Now, without going into loads of detail, there's actually potentially a couple of bits of information on this message. There's some message text, which is on, which I'm going to grab from this message.text. So this is what we call an object in JavaScript. An object is a way of grouping together pieces of information that belong with each other. But I've also got a timestamp that we might use a bit later. I'm not going to do it right now because we'll come back to that later. But the message text is sort of something that lives on this message object. You can think of it as like a bowl or something that has all of the bits that are related to each other. Okay. So let me just find my code. So for all of my messages, I want to create a new list item. So I'm going to do that. And there you'll see that li, right? The same thing that I used for the name of the tag up there. And inside that list item, I'm going to stick my message text. So I'm going to, the new list item is itself an object. And so I can do something a little bit similar to what I've done here and say, I want you to have some inner text. And that, I'm going to make that equal to the message text. I'm totally aware, I apologies if I'm saying this too much, but I'm totally aware that this will be too much for people to follow, you know, if this is new to you. All I care about right now is that you've got a vague understanding of what I'm trying to do and how this is sort of helping me get there, and not that you'll be able to recreate this anytime soon. That's absolutely fine. Okay, cool. Well, I can't see anything yet. I wonder if anyone's got any ideas about why I can't see this list item that I've created. Cool. So you may have had an idea. Well, okay, I've made this list item, but in my HTML, the list item, I can see this because it's inside my UL, which is in turn inside the div, which is in turn inside the body. And actually this kind of list item I've made here is just kind of floating around in memory at the moment, in the computer's memory. I haven't stuck it to this document so we can see it. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to get the message list, which I fetched earlier. Here it is. And I'm going to append a child. So you'll see words like parent and child and sibling a lot in this kind of thing, because that shows that relationship between the different elements on the page. And I'm going to stick my new list item in there. And let's see if this works. It's kind of the moment of truth. Okay, cool. So I had this message already in the database ready for this. And we can see that it's worked, which is good news because I didn't really want to be figuring out what went wrong there. So I'm going to get rid of this one from here. And we'll just stick with the real database one. Okay, so just to recap a little bit what I've done there. I've got this code that I already wrote. It's just listening to the, it's contacting or connecting to the database on another computer somewhere across the internet through my Wi-Fi, through the wires that go under the ground, under the sea to wherever it is. I think it's in Europe, but I'm not entirely sure. And I've just said, every time there's a change or when I first connect to your database, please could you let me know about all of those changes. I'm going to get the message from that change, and then I'm going to pass that to this function that I've made, which is add it to a list. And this function just grabs the text off that message, creates a new list item, and sticks that text inside that list item, and then sticks that list item inside the list that I've got in my HTML. And suddenly we've got a connection between a computer somewhere across the internet to our own computer at home, and that is, the internet at work. Cool. Mark asked if there's a recording of yesterday's Q&A. I think Becky from Manchester Digital has been recording them all. I'll have to check for you. I don't know, but I'll make sure she lets you know. Okay, cool. Well, this is nice and everything, but we can't. At the moment, this bit isn't connected. So we've got this box connected to the internet, and it's fetching the stuff from the database. But I can't actually put anything inside there myself, because I can type stuff in here, and actually when I press enter, it's going to do something really annoying. It thinks I'm trying to go to a new website when I submit this form, which I'm not. So I have to, if I just do something, it will restart for me. So I'm going to have to customize my behavior of this form, so it doesn't try and go to a new site, when you submit the form, but actually just posts the message that I've written there up to the database. So I'm going to make a new function here, and I'm going to call this. What did I call it here? I'm going to call it submit message. Submit, just a word that we use to describe what happens when you press enter in a form, or when you press a button in a form to say I'm done. Okay. So on this submit message, I want to grab whatever someone's written inside this box. That's the first thing I'm going to do. But first I need the box. I can't grab the stuff inside the box unless I get the box. Good job. We know how to do that now, because we've done that once. We know how to fetch it. And we know that it's easiest if we give the thing an ID in order so we can fetch it. So I'm going to open up my HTML again. I'm going to give my form an ID. Call that message submission form. You may be wondering, why am I writing it like this, with like the first word all lowercase and all the subsequent words starting with a capital letter? This is called Camel Case in programming. I guess because you start off low, but then it's humps from there. Just a common way of writing things. It's just a convention, makes things readable. Doesn't actually affect how it works at all. I could write it all lowercase or all capitals. Wouldn't matter as long as I was consistent. So I'm going to do something very similar to how I did it before. I'm going to grab this from the HTML document by its ID. And get message submission form. Cool. And I realized actually I am going to need this form, but I'm actually going to need the input box itself. That was the thing that I said I needed, because that's going to be the thing that has the text in it. So let's do that again here. So we're going to say message input field. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the HTML and make sure that one's got that ID as well. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do is grab the text that's inside that input field when I've written something. So I'm going to call it new message text. And I'm going to get that from the message input field I've just got above there. And that's got a property or a bit of information on it called the value. And that is the text that someone's written inside there. Sometimes I'm sticking semicolons at the end of lines, sometimes I'm not. I'm horribly inconsistent about this. It doesn't matter too much in most cases with JavaScript. Maybe I'll try and do it without, just to get rid of some of the noise. There's no way I'm going to be consistent, so I apologize. Feels like that one should have one. I don't know why. Excuse me. So great, I've got some text now. Now I need to get it up into the database. So cool, I have this database reference up here that I made earlier. So if I want to interact with the database, I do it through this DB variable that I made earlier. And I'm just going to do db dot collection messages, and really honestly do not worry about this too much. And I'm going to those messages, I'm going to add a message. Now I said before that this message can have some text on it, but it can also have a timestamp. So I'm going to make sure we know when this message was submitted, and that's going to be useful for us making sure all the messages appear in the right order later. So I'm going to stick 2 pieces of information inside this argument. I'm going to have the text of the message, which is the new message text, and I'm going to have a timestamp, which I'm going to grab the time right now. And there's a nice, easy way to do this in JavaScript with this here. And what that's actually going to give me is something quite interesting. At least I think it's interesting. I'm just going to show you what it looks like. It's quite hard to see. Oh, I know how we can do this. We could. So I'm just going to change the text to use the timestamp as a text instead of the message for a second. That's not. Oh. Oh yeah, get rid of that, sorry. Okay, so that's what my timestamp is. Doesn't look very useful as a date or anything like that. I will let you think about that for a couple of minutes whilst I complete this. And if you have any ideas how that might represent the time, then feel free to put it in the chat. And again, you can have 5 worthless Jonny points for your efforts. So that will do for now. Is there anything else I want to do? No, we'll leave it at that. Okay, cool. I'll change that back to text. Now let's see if that works. So I'm going to press enter on this form. Oh no, because I'm still doing this thing where it's trying to submit the form and go to a new page. I'm not actually using this function yet. I haven't connected this function to anything. So I'm going to go to this last block here, and I'm going to make sure that this form is listening for when we click the button or press enter. We haven't made a button yet. We could do that. So I'm going to write a piece of text which is going to say, listen to this event. An event is anything that can happen at any time on your computer, and lots of the events that we talk about when we write this sort of code are things that our user does, like click or drag or scroll or resize the page, or anything that you might do. And we can listen to all of these events and make stuff happen if we add event listeners to our code. So this has a slightly weird syntax, but bear with it. We get told about this event, and the main thing I want to do is just stop it from doing that default behavior, stop it from trying to send me somewhere else. So that's just the quick way to do that. And then the other thing I want to do is submit the message. So now I've connected this behavior that I've written to my input field. We'll see if that's made a difference. No, it hasn't. Oh, I've got an error here though, so maybe I've done something else. Okay. So this is really, we never get things right first time in programming. Luckily, we've got computers to tell us what we've done wrong. So it's not working because I've done add event listener wrong. I've said what should happen on when the event happens, but I haven't said what the event is that I'm listening for. Because like I said, there's loads of different events it could be. So actually the first thing that I need to tell this is what event I'm listening for, which is a submit event. And then the second thing is the function. And Ava has deducted me 5 Jonny points. And if you did that every time I got something wrong in programming Ava, then I would be like underwater significantly with my my own points. So please be gentle with me. Okay, so and with yourselves, it's really hard to get this right first time. So let's try again. Please work. Oh no. Okay, I know what I've done wrong. It's not as obvious this time. This one's awkward. I've attached this to the input field, but I actually want to attach it to the form. It's the form that gets submitted, not the input field. So I'm pretty sure this is going to be the last one. And maybe if I put in an extra, please. Yay, hurrah. Okay, so you've just seen what it's really like to program live in front of however many of you there are. Cool, okay, so I've got that message showing up there. I'm not very keen on this behavior here. Like I pressed enter, but we're used to when we submit forms, the text clearing, right? We don't really want to have to delete it, so we can then write our own message. So I'm going to do that as well. And I'm going to lump that in with this behavior of submitting the message. I'm going to change the value of the input fields to just be like an empty bit of text, or an empty string, we call them. So a new message text is going to be some text, but there's nothing in between there, right? So this should disappear from the input field. Nope, I've done something wrong. I don't want to change new message text. I want to change this. So there we go. Seems like it's the same thing, but no, I won't go into that then. This should actually disappear. There we go. And that's a little bit more like how we'd expect a chat room to work. Okay, I'm going to just give that 30 seconds to sink in. If you've got any questions, anything, I've got a few more bits that I can do with this, and we've still got a bit of time. If you are working on this, or you can follow the link in the chat, which I'll post again because I know some people joined a bit late, then you should also now be able to use this and make this work, and we should all see each other's messages. So have a go putting in your own message. And I was wondering whether I could trust you all to like post messages on the screen, but I figured all I'm actually doing is making a a chat which you've already got. So hopefully you'll all be sensible enough to not put in anything too profane. Hello from whoever that is. We haven't obviously built in any functionality that Katie, that does anything about the user, you know, who's actually submitting this. But we've got a few people here, so so that's really cool. Hopefully you can kind of see some of the power. So as I said near the start, this is the sort of thing that, you know, should be not too much strain to be doing kind of towards, like, say 2/3 of the way through the course. We'll have kind of covered all of the stuff that you need to make something like this. And this really isn't very far away from what an actual chat room, how an actual chat room would be working. It would have a few more bits of functionality, would be a little bit neater and nicer, styling and so on. But the technology is all here, and we've done it all kind of from scratch. So there was very, very little here before we started. So I really hope that's given you an impression of like how much you can do in a short amount of time once you get to know these things, which is hopefully something that you're interested in, and hopefully something that you're still interested in after witnessing me both get it right and wrong in equal measure over the last hour or so. So we've got 15 minutes or so before we wrap up. Please give me a shout. If you've got any questions, feel free to talk. Feel free to write them in our lovely new chat room or in the Zoom chat, and I'll do that. They can be questions about this technology. You can ask me, how would you do something with this? It could be questions about Northcoders, questions about learning to code, what to do next, anything like that. The only question you can't ask is no question at all. You can do that, but please, someone ask a question, because else I'll just be sat here.
I'm just jumping back in here, so you're not on your own, Jonny.
Thanks, Becky. That's really nice.
I'll come and keep you company. Does anyone have any questions? I think we've got Katie's put one here.
Yeah.
How long does it take for things to come naturally, or do you have a database or code to refer to?
That's a really, really good question. So there's probably like a little bit of core stuff which does become second nature, and you know, if you play an instrument or you learn a language or anything like that, you know what it's like to, or even like, you know, like a computer game. Once you get to know the controls, you don't really think about them as you're doing that. But there's so much to programming, and you really aren't expected to learn it all, because you never will. Like it's impossible. So half, if not more, of programming is recognizing what the problem is and knowing how to describe that problem so you can type it into a Google search and find someone else's solution to it. So that is a huge amount of the skill. Yeah, there's some stuff which, you know, most of what I've written today, I could at least spot what I'd done wrong fairly quickly, but I've got like a finished version up on my other screen that I'm referring to, so don't feel like I'm, you know, I could just do this off the bat. I'm not, you know, no smoke and mirrors here. This is difficult. So yeah. Yes, it does work. Congratulations. I've got a couple of questions that come into me privately that you won't be able to see, Becky. So 3 very good questions, actually. So what are the chances of getting a job after the course? Is there any help for getting financing? What are the advantages of doing Northcoders as opposed to trying to work it out? Oh, we've got quite a few questions coming in. Right, I'll go through these quickly because we've not got loads of time. So chance of getting a job after the course. Historically, we've hovered between the 90 and 95% of everyone getting a job. It's dipped a little bit over coronavirus, as you might expect, but it's still stayed pretty high. Currently, we have more jobs available for people to be applying for than we have people to apply for them who are graduating. So we are in a good place for jobs at the moment, and I think tech in general has done fairly well in this environment. This might have been stuff that's come in Q&As previously. I don't know, but I'd say now is a good time, and with the vaccine and so on, we're probably in a situation where everyone's looking to the future and thinking, yeah, there's opportunities to grow here. I'll just point you towards our website for financing. There's definitely a few options. You don't have to pay everything up front. The advantages of doing Northcoders, trying to work out for yourself. So one thing, when I first, because I did the course before I became a tutor there, and one thing we were told on our very first day was, there's nothing that we're going to teach you that's kind of like secret knowledge, right? It's all there available on the internet for you to find and teach yourself. What we're providing is that live instruction, that cohort that you can refer to, and a sequence of learning and a place to hold yourself to account. And all of those are things that are kind of priceless, really. I think it's the space, the guidance, and the means to teach yourself. Some people do teach themselves. I think you have to have a very specific mindset and set of life circumstances in order to be able to do that. I think it's really, really, really difficult for people. But the kind of knowledge we teach, we've taught, like Karen said at the start, we taught 750 people, and we've really honed it down, like everything you need to know in order to go into that first junior developer role. So that is it, right? We know what to teach, we know what order to teach it, we know how people learn, and we'll give you the tools, the instruction, and the exercises in order to do that we've kind of developed ourselves. So that is it, really. Can Jonny points be traded for monetary value? No. Maybe like you get on the back of those coupons where it's like, this coupon can be exchanged for 0.001 pence. I'll do that. That's fine. Cool. A few more questions. So Chris, hey, are all of your bootcamp courses currently online only? Do you expect this transitioning to the classroom? Yeah. So as you say, depending on COVID, everything depends on it. We have a lovely new empty office space in the centre of Manchester, which we're really sad that we can't use at the moment because we've just got it. It's massive and brilliant, and we've got every intention of using it as soon as we can. We haven't set a date when we expect people to be there because we're worried that we'll just be letting people down. So yes, they are all online only, but we are doing our absolute best, and I'd say we've had good feedback on this, that we are doing a pretty good job of representing the actual environment, what it would be like to code in person together. You'll still be pairing, you'll still be working with each other on your code, you'll still have group sessions, still be checking in with you. It'll just be over internet. But we do want to use the space back when we can, and we will also at that point continue to keep delivering it remotely as well for those who that it doesn't suit, because we've discovered we can do that, and that's been the one good thing that's come out of this for us, is that we discovered we can teach online as well, which is really exciting. Max, industry standard programs to write in code. I'm using VS Code. That's what we use at Northcoders. If you're writing JavaScript or several other languages, are really good. VS Code is really good for. Absolutely, it's industry standard. Fully recommend it. It's free and really powerful, fairly intuitive. Probably not the first thing I would write code on, but something you can pick up after you've done a little bit of practice on some other platforms, which I use. But absolutely, VS Code is great. A working day project is a great question, Katie. So We start with a little bit of time to work on some exercises in the morning, kind of get you warmed up. Then we'll have a lecture, normally about an hour and a half, fairly similar to what I've just delivered today. We'll just be coding, talking about what we're doing, explaining the things. No slides, it's all live coding, it's all seeing it up there, you know, hopefully not like college, university lectures that you've struggled to get through in the past. Try and keep it very engaging. Main thing you should be doing during those lectures is listening and asking questions as soon as they come to you. So you leave that lecture ready to kind of work on a what we call a sprint or an exercise, a project over the rest of the day. Might then end up the day with like a solution lecture or a demonstration or people showing the code that they've written, something like that. So the vast chunk of the day goes towards you actually putting it into practice, making things, because that is the best way to learn. Is, you know, watching this, I'm hoping you've learned something from watching this, but watching this back and actually making it, you'll get even more from that. Administrator, which I'm going to guess is not your real name, but if it is, that's a very brave set of parents you've got there. I'm a student in my first year of college. How and when could I start this course, and how much does it cost? How much does it cost? How long is it? So the main bootcamp we run is 14 weeks. The cost is 7,200, but as I mentioned earlier, there's various ways to finance that. You don't necessarily have to pay a lot of it up front. There's also kind of like a way of just doing the first week to try it out and then not pay for the rest. You can start the course when you're 18. We take in people every 7 weeks, so there's always a cohort coming up. You just need to let us know. If I'm not fully answering questions, by the way, just feel free to probe me again, and I'll come back to them. Shaquille, has the current pandemic affected the rate at which companies hire? So it definitely did at the start, when it was all really uncertain, didn't know how long this was going to last. We had a drop off in the people who we were talking to for sure. And what we did then was stop bringing on students for a little while, because we didn't want to end up with a backlog of people that we were trying to find jobs for. You know, a lot. So we now are accepting students again, and November and December last year were our most successful hiring months for a couple of years, because people were companies were on catching up with themselves as well. So I don't expect that anymore it will be an issue. And like I said, we've got more jobs available than we're getting. Programming language to learn in 2021, I would still go with JavaScript. I think JavaScript's still good for everything. If you're more into data science, if you know you're not going to be into websites at all or web programming, but you do like coding, then Python is another really good entry language, a little bit more focused on the mathematical side of programming, stuff to do with data. Totally worth your time as well. But those are places I'd start for sure, JavaScript or Python, because you can see your results really quickly, and they've got kind of a low barrier to entry. You can start getting stuff done with them pretty quickly with some just free software and easy stuff to download. Job titles for graduate, what will you be qualified for? So the basic one is what we call a junior developer. A junior developer is like an entry-level developer. The same thing that you'd be essentially be qualified to do if you spent 3 years doing a computer science degree. So it's a bit less of the theory from a full degree, and a bit more of the vocational practical aspects of it. That's the main thing. A few people go on to slightly different roles. Some people go into like hybrid roles with more kind of like agency design kind of roles. but not very many. A few people go into roles to do with testing, which is something I won't go into now, but a common part of programming. But most people, a vast majority, go into what you call a junior developer. The average pay for that is around about 25,000 on entry, and most people are kind of in the mid to high 30s after a couple of years. It's a very well paid job. So yeah, useful skills to learn. To what extent do we help graduates get jobs? So we have a week in the middle of the course which is entirely devoted to helping you with your career prospects. So how to kind of do the networking stuff, doing CV, interview techniques, how tech tests work, all kind of the useful stuff. And that comes right in the middle of the course, because then that's basically when we start trying to talk to you about jobs and making plans for as soon as you finish, you can start applying. Some people get their jobs before they even finish the course. Not many, I don't want to make that kind of promise, but a few people do. So yeah, and then the time it takes to get the job, it's definitely been skewed a bit by coronavirus, but it's you should expect kind of somewhere between a few weeks and a few months. Most people by 3 months generally, but again, please don't take that as any kind of promise. I'm just relaying the numbers as they are. I want to make apps to help people with ADHD. I have ADHD myself. Find a lot of existing apps lacking. How useful is this course? So we do talk about a really important aspect of programming called accessibility, and accessibility is about making the web useful to people with all sorts of different kinds of conditions and impairments. Really important part of programming. If some places you work, you'll have a legal responsibility to do that. Totally want that to feed in. We've had several people with dyslexia, dyspraxia, ADHD, autism, or various scales take part in the course, and we do our best to accommodate you. The most important thing we do is, I think, just ask you what can we do to help, and generally we're able to do that. So yeah, as long as you're kind of informing us of what's working for you and what's not, then we'll adapt to suit you. That's totally useful for us. Generally, things you do to help people with conditions like that actually benefit everyone. So completely believe with that.